So when I'm asked what are the tools that I really couldn't work without, I've commonly said, well, my hands and what I've packed in my brain. And beyond that, there's a couple of tools that I'm really fond of. One is lasers, and I've given a video on that previously, and another one is the application of pulsed electromagnetic fields, commonly called PEMF. And that's what I wanted to focus on today, just to let you know what that acronym actually means. So every day of our life, we're exposed to pulsed electromagnetic fields, and most of them aren't that beneficial to us. Like, I'm sitting in front of one right now, and I'm sitting under some right now. And these are like 60 cycle hertz frequencies that really don't help my body. I can see because the lights are on, but the energy that's emitted from that in some individuals actually has some detrimental effect in terms of how they feel and function. And most people can concede the point that if they sit in front of their computer for extended periods of time, they have both eye fatigue and brain fatigue that wouldn't happen if they were outside working. That's one example of a negative impact of a pulsed electromagnetic field. So how can you use this concept for good? Well, that's what I want to share with you today. Every tissue in our body has a vibratory frequency. And they've found that bones resonate at one frequency relative to muscle, relative to nerve tissue, relative to adipose. And each of those resonant frequencies can be augmented or hindered depending on the external frequency that the body's exposed to. Maybe some of you might have felt this when you pull up to a stop sign and somebody pulls up next to you with a monster woofer in their car and it's playing a song that really doesn't, strike your fancy. And it almost hurts to hear it or feel it. That would be an overt example of a negative impact of a frequency on the body because you can hear it and you can actually feel it. Well, generally, pulsed electromagnetic fields are things that you can't feel. They're just around you. So you can take devices like this that measure both electromagnetic fields, magnetic fields, and radio waves and kind of get a feel for what's around you. Those are really fun to play with, as a matter of fact. I had one building, just a quick side note, that had an elevator power cable built into the ground in the cement of my floor, and we were trying to do EEGs in that room. And we're like getting this weird reading. I'm like, hey, this can't be coming from somebody's head. And when we went in there with that, every time somebody pushed the button to make the elevator move, that room would just spike with an electromagnetic field that would disrupt what we were trying to read on that patient. So knowing your surrounding and where you live is really important. I've seen variations on that theme many times with some of our more sensitive patients. And interestingly, this is just one more side note, people become more sensitive to electromagnetic fields with head injuries and mold exposure and other toxic burden that their body's carrying that their central and peripheral nervous system gets burdened by. So recognize that all of us are experiencing garbage in the environment on a regular basis, but not everyone manages it in the same way. And heaven forbid you've had a head injury, that just compounds the body's ability to manage some of this burden that we all carry. And those are usually the folks that I see that become more sensitive, and they really need somebody that understands that process to help them go through it. So those were two side notes relative to electromagnetic fields. Let me get into the meat of how to apply good use of electromagnetic fields. So early on, they found that people that have bone fractures that aren't healing well, they're called non-union fractures, could use a bone stimulator to kind of wake up those osteoblasts, the cells on either end of the fracture, to make them see each other and begin to mend. Well, a bone stimulator is just a little tiny electromagnetic field placed on either side of a bone fracture. So with that advent, people started to recognize, like, wow, I can use electricity to help my body heal. Take that and amplify it now. There's no limit to the ways that you can utilize electricity in a proper manner. So we have a variety of different electromagnetic devices that we use. We have whole beds that an individual can lay on that does the exact same thing that I just described, but in a broader sense. and they help the body to reduce pain, they increase circulation, they speed tissue healing because they cause the amplification of ATP and nitric oxide in the body and cellular exchange of electrons. So if you can move electrons back and forth across the cell, you can speed up what that cell does in terms of healing. So PEMF works really well in that response. And I'm going to give you one other brief case history. This was a patient that had 4 concussions in a 6-month period of time. And when they presented to us, they had lost the capacity to read. And I mean, they could communicate, but it was a struggle for them because their brain had been so bruised. Now, there's not a lot that you could do for that situation medicinally. It's really just time and allowing the brain to heal. Well, if you can give that type of a brain a proper electromagnetic field, it actually gets in and helps that brain heal. So we were able to use some micro Teslas, where it's just a microcurrent. You can't even feel it. And it allows for the brain to upregulate its cellular exchange. And then we augment that. We actually use laser with that patient as well, and proper nutrition. And just miraculous turnaround. We see that regularly when we combine some of these therapies that are energetic therapies to help bodies heal. So PEMF, or pulsed electromagnetic fields, can be used for brain injuries. They can be used for spinal or extremity injuries. They can be used for pain and inflammation. They can be used for fatigue. The list just goes on and on as to its application. And what I would say to you in that regard is make sure that you have a practitioner that understands how to use that therapy, because all therapies really do require specific adjusting and parameters for each individual's use. But they are safe to use and quite successful if used appropriately. So if you have the opportunity to look into a PEMF, or you're dealing with chronic pain that you just can't get past, or inflammation that your body has been holding on to, or tissues that aren't healing well, consider it. It's something that really could be beneficial to you, and it doesn't require a lot of time or effort. Have a great day.